Us, hello. I'm a bit early, I know, but I may as well because we're all chatting anyway. Good to see everyone. Mike, Rochelle, Torbjörn. Thanks for joining in. Frederick, Us. Hope everyone's well. Things have been going well with the book. I had some really exciting news today, but I'm not going to jinx it by saying anything. I'll let you know when it comes. Us, Buddy, good to see you, man. I'm not going to jinx it yet, but when it is 100% confirmed and I have everything in hand, then I'll let you know. I think it's a really exciting uh, development, and it couldn't be more appropriate. But anyway, Urs, Paddy, good to see you, man. Hey, Lennox, how are you, buddy? Helping Dad with the teaching? Good on you. Daniel, Al, Paul, Urs, Marco. You got the book and everything, hey, Marco? That's good news. I'm going to be getting down to Sydney probably in November, Daniel. I'm going down to Wollongong. I know it's a long way. It's a couple of 100 k's, but if you're able to get down that way, I'll be doing a grading and a seminar in late November. So stay in touch about that. Us, Mike, good to see you. So anyway, that's exciting news. I enjoyed that interview with Mark Castanini, Paddy. Really nice guy, and he's had very little to do with Kyokushin for many years, but he loves Kyokushin, and he never ever fails to honor Sensei Eddie, and despite all his years in the kickboxing game and everything, he always pays his respects to Sensei Eddie, and that's how it should be. So I love that. I love that about him too, his humility. So today I'm going to do another little reading from the book. But before I do, Patreon family, thank you. Shout out to Matthew Karamatic. He's just joined the Patreon family. I really appreciate it, and I'm really starting to feel even more and more every month what a difference it's making to me being able to do what I'm doing. Urs Sven, good to see you, Urs. So thank you very much. If you love what I do and you think you're getting something out of it, well then share the love at Patreon, and by all means share this too. And if you're not a member of the Facebook YouTube page, by all means subscribe to that. Hit the little bell, give it a 1-2, subscribe, hit the bell, or give it a thumbs up and a comment. Appreciate everything. I'm getting around to those comments, but boy, oh boy. Mike Clark, that was a really strange one, wasn't it? I don't know what that was. I just think, that comment about whatever it was, I think sometimes some people just place a comment and it makes no sense to me. I get a few comments every now and then, and I just think they're kind of spamish, and people go, oh, yeah, loved your video. Loved your video. Really great content. Subscribed. By the way, why don't you subscribe to my channel? You go to the channel and it's like a hip hop music thing, and you just know they haven't even looked at the content. So sometimes I go, oh, that's great to hear. Which, yeah, that's right. I say, which part did you really love? And you never hear back from the course because they haven't even watched it. They have no idea. Godfather, that's the one. Oh boy, oh boy. So anyway, today I'm going to read a little more from the book. I'm going to read about the black belt section. I know over time I've probably read the same section a few times over and everything, but I think, it's enjoyable. One of the things that the book did when it first came out, it was, if not the first book, then one of the very first books to connect the martial arts training with the symbolism and metaphor that you find through yoga. There's a very strong connection, and Solsai said that Shin Gi Tai, Shin mind, Gi technique, Tai body. He said that the Shin part of Shingi Tai originates in India. The gi technique part of Shingi Tai originates in China, and the Tai, the conditioning part, approach training of Tai originates in Japan. So he had a very strong connection to India. So I'm just going to read a little bit from the book today, and I'm going to read the section on the Udansha realms, chapter 15. And I start off with a comment by Soulside: power is no more than a part, no more than the tip of the iceberg of the limitless profundity and sublimity of karate. The step from brown belt to black belt is one of the most important in the life of the karateka. Up to and including brown belt, the various requirements of the colored belts still affect the students and are in need of constant work. To what end? The coveted black belt is the common goal of all karateka, yet its demands are substantial, and many who once aspired to it meekly settle for lesser levels, not willing to face the demanding requirements of Udansha. And I think everyone knows too that there's a couple of strong dropout points. I think the first one is the yellow belt. It seems to be a bit of a dropout. Then the second one is the brown belt, because the prospect of doing the hard Shodan grading is sometimes a little bit overwhelming. I think that tends to reflect something missing in the teaching. And then another dropout point is Shodan. You get so many people do their Shodan, you never see them again. And it's really sad that people do that, go that far, and then drop out. And to me, it shows that they haven't really made karate a part of their life. It's just literally another hobby, and they take that serious enough. You have to take it seriously enough to get to Shodan, but it's just unfortunate that they leave right when everything's just about to take off. From first dan black belt onwards, these requirements should be second nature. Training is now essentially fine-tuning. Research into the techniques and attitudes of the masters past and present helps the junior black belt with such refinements. I'm just settling into the seat here. As we have seen, at its purest, black, like white, occurs rarely in nature and is often not regarded as a color as such. For many reasons, though, black is closely related to the deep blue of the fifth spinal center, the Vishuddha chakra, whose element is the void. This deep blue is the color of spirit. It is the color that represents the realms beyond the physical, and so on, and so in itself is not attainable in the colored ranks. If one adds more blue to the mix of colors that make brown, that is, if one concentrates on a perfect balance between body, mind, and spirit in karate, the color produced is very dark gray, the closest to black that is possible from the colors of the spectrum. Thus, black belt is the nearest representative of spirit for the karateka. It is the colorless color, the color which takes in all colors. If exposed to strong sunlight, a black surface will absorb light waves so completely that it soon becomes too hot to touch. This becomes the motto of the new black belt, too hot to touch. His training reflects this attitude. Black is the color of strength. Again, using the analogy of the painter and his colors, black is too strongly pigmented to be covered easily by another color. The black belt is the strongest of all karateka, and no colored belt can cover him. Nevertheless, arrival at Shodan, literally the beginning level, is a new start to the journey, not the end. So there is no room to entertain pride and egotism. How foolish to think that one has it all at Shodan, or at any dan for that matter. The realm of the black belt has 10 levels. Like the 10 steps of the colored belts, each one has its own significance. If the Udansha continues to train tirelessly into the late years of life, like the symbol of the white belt that gradually became black, his black belt slowly fades, becomes frayed at the edges, and turns somewhat white again. That's just a metaphor. Don't take it too seriously. Us, Ken, Bill, Harry, Us, thanks for joining in. Thanks for coming. You know, some people take that kind of things literally. They want their black belt to become white and ragged. Solsai never did that. Solsai said, what you really should be doing is constantly renewing your belt, so it shows that you're constantly renewing your training. He had a different approach to it. Thus, the circle is symbolically complete. The master becomes the student once more. The whole process may then be repeated, only in realms that go beyond mere technique, beyond the fluctuations of the mind, beyond the understanding of the average person. Such is the realm of the Udansha. Introspection. In the martial arts, this is from Masayama's mottos. In the martial arts, introspection begets wisdom. Always see contemplation on your actions as an opportunity to improve. I was about to ask how BJJ wear the same black belt, correct? Not sure what you mean. Yes, but yeah, they also use the black belt. Sorry, Patty, I'm misunderstanding what you wrote there. I was about to ask also how BJJ wear the same black belt. Correct. Yes, BJJ, all martial arts have borrowed that that judo idea that Kano Sensei originally began. Is that what you're referring to, Patty? Anyway, introspection. The art of honest introspection is a new weapon for the beginner black belt. Take note of the trends of your thoughts. Analyze your mind to see if your thinking is that of a black belt or a beginner. Take particular note of the predominant thoughts in your mind throughout the day. If they are incompatible with the consciousness of a black belt, then make efforts to change them. The art is aimed at polishing the soul, not merely technique. Oh, yes, we get a new belt per Dan. Yeah, in BJJ, yeah, they add originally they do. They add another stripe up to a certain point, then they get a new belt. I think they get a new belt at 6th Dan or something like that. Now I get what you mean. Yeah. Daily introspection takes only a few minutes. Each night, review how you behave. Did you bring some kindness, some light into someone's life without expecting anything in return? Did you react, think, talk like a mature karateka, a warrior? If not, why? Were you able to contain the emotional reactions when faced with small and large annoyances as they came and went? Each day is full of opportunities to prove to yourself how much work still needs to be done. And I didn't say there, I said that on purpose. I didn't say prove to yourself how far you've advanced, although some people would probably read it like that. Each day is an opportunity to prove to yourself how much work there still needs to be done. Be gracious about it. You can fool others, but with the scalpel of introspection, you can never fool yourself. Note what is revealed and act accordingly. Introspection brings wisdom only when it is acted upon. Take negative traits one at a time and work on them. Throughout the day, keep an image in your mind of someone whom you respect and admire. Keep that image in your heart. It could be anyone, your own father or your mother, Christ for the Christian, Buddha for the Buddhist. It could be a great warrior of the past, India's Arjuna or Japan's Musashi or our own Sosai Masayama. It could be someone you know personally and respect greatly. When faced with decisions, ask yourself how that person would behave. What would they say or do in the same circumstances? How would a true master of karate react to this and that event in life? The mind of a warrior is calm. Hei Joshin. Remain calm and unruffled, no matter what the agitation, and you will not find yourself succumbing to inappropriate behavior. If you feel that is still beyond you, take steps to rein in your emotional reactions so that in time you remain unaffected by any provocation. And then I've got a quote from Yogananda: a true yogi stands unshaken amidst the crash of falling worlds. That's just so beautiful. And it just shows how Yogananda's concept of what a yogi was exactly the same with Masayama's concept of what a true karateka was. A true yogi stands unshaken amidst the crash of falling worlds. At times when you are under pressure and feel the loss of poise and frustration rising, take a deep breath and hold it for a second or two. Then breathe out with a soft, almost silent ibuki breath, even with your mouth closed. Bring the awareness to the hara. Here too, visualize someone you respect and honor, and let that thought inspire you to make the changes that count. The perfect attitude of the warrior is universally one with the perfect attitude of the Christian, Buddhist, or yogi. In training, introspection clearly reveals your many weaknesses. Analyze why your opponent scored, and then make the effort to remove that weakness from your defense. Likewise, when you fail to score a particular technique, analyze why and train accordingly to resolve the issue. This is using self-reflection to advance your skills quickly. The period of meditation following training is an excellent time to reflect on your performance. Nothing is concealed from the mirror of introspection. It can be a very ego-destroying and unflaming lesson. So you think you are good at karate. Analyze your attitude honestly for just one training session. Did you remain fully focused? Absolutely, 100% unwaveringly focused? Or did the mind drift even a little? How well did you concentrate? Were there elements of uncertainty? Even a little reflection will reveal how often we tend to float through the Kihon with less than optimal effort. You alone are responsible for your training. Take ownership today through the power of introspection. As a black belt, remain aware of your shortcomings at all times. The Shodan is not a master yet, but if he refuses to give up, one day his consistency will be rewarded. What is the difference between a beginner and a black belt? A black belt is a white belt who never gave up. The master is the beginner who never gave up in his efforts to improve. That's one, I may have mentioned that before. Us, Clarence, good to see you. That's one phrase which I claim ownership to. A black belt is a white belt who never gave up, which I just wish I had copyright, because it's become so huge around the world. And I've even seen things like a black belt is a white belt who never gave up, signed by Elio Gracie, or a black belt is a white belt who never gave up, Kimura Masahiko. But in my first book, I didn't write a black belt is a white belt who never gave up. I actually deliberately avoided it because I thought it was too cliche. So what I did write was the master is the beginner who never gave up. And then, but on the dojo wall, I had the poster, black belt is a white belt who never gave up. And it literally took off after that. It became very big, and I had a lot of visitors to the dojo. Anyway, that's just by the by. Have faith in your potential, but be honest with your self-assessment. Know where you are, where you're going, and how you'll get there. Then work to close the gap. Personal training for the black belt. Tannen sennichi shobu ishun. That's a Japanese saying. Training 1,000 days, the fight over in an instant. One reaching black belt should be thoroughly familiar with every aspect of the art. Gradings for different black belt levels are years apart. In the absence of the quarterly or half-yearly gradings, the Udansha must develop suitable ways to prioritize and continually improve the important aspect of training. These aspects are: 1, conditioning, speed, strength, endurance, flexibility, and body hardening. 2, kihon, including ido kihon and footwork. 3, kata, including oyo and bunkai. 4, seishin ryoku, which is willpower and attitude. And 5, kumite, sambon, ippon, jiu, and jisen kumite. And I include footwork in the kihon because I did, on Monday, I talked about kihon and how a lot of people think kihon is just the 30 basic techniques. But the reality is none of those techniques mean anything if you can't use them in practical footwork. So we include good footwork patterns in every training session we do. One method to get the most out of training is to use a similar training plan to the quarterly training system, a quarterly grading system of the early Q grades. The black belt is a return to the beginner's mind, Such a return to the spirit of the beginner should be adopted enthusiastically. It is the key to growth. Besides daily attention being given to all 5 aspects of training, the Udansha can establish a pattern of quarterly focus in his training. For example, whilst maintaining his conditioning training throughout the entire year, for 3 months, attention is given to refinement of some movement principle or certain points of the Shihan. That can be followed by 3 months focused on perfecting 1 or 2 kata, a natural carryover from the previous concentration on Shihan. Then the Udansha shifts the emphasis to the various aspects of willpower, courage, assertion, heijoshin, emotional control, and so on. Each week throughout the quarter, challenge something new and demanding on the mind. A tough set of stairs, beat last week's time, not stepping back in kumite against a strong training partner, or perhaps push yourself through a normal training session whilst maintaining a calm mind and the awareness at the tanden. For the next quarter, perhaps coinciding with an upcoming tournament, the emphasis in training goes to kumite. Again, the previous 3 months training block, a 3-month training block focused on the mindset, will contribute immensely to movement. Each quarter can be further broken down into monthly, weekly, and daily units with each of its own point of focus. Each with its own point of focus. In this way, training is planned with clear, detailed goals in mind. The finer the detail, the clearer the process. Create a 5-year plan, then break it down to annual, quarterly, monthly, weekly, and daily goals and plans. Spend a little time each night before you sleep preparing for tomorrow. And when I work on that, Uspal, thanks for joining us. When I work on that with people, I encourage them just to take 9 to 12 minutes once a day before they go to sleep to map out tomorrow, and then you wake up on the run already. It makes such a big difference. 9 to 12 minutes. You can do it while you're having a cup of tea, or you can do it, towards the end after dinner, and you sit down, and do it then. Prepare your training gear. Review your logbook and any notes you made for tomorrow's training. Be clear with the plan. Clarity removes procrastination. As a Udansha, you should constantly be in the spirit of training. The mind is ever searching for answers to a subtle refinement of a technique or a profound psychological state. Generate the feeling of calm power in reserve. Be best known for a courageous yet benevolent spirit. Consistently strong training continues until at least well into the 40s, even the 50s, if a healthy lifestyle and injury prevention has been managed well. There is no reason to slow down if the body is still sound, especially when you look around and you see so many people. I caught up with my old students recently who was saying he's starting to get a sore hip and he may have to do something about the hip. And then you look at so many people who have had hip replacements and so on. And I don't think it's a consequence of training per se. I think there's more to it than that. I think it's a consequence, first of all, of diet. When people have a very acidic diet, very high in meat and so on, then that can contribute to the breakdown of joints very much. And also, I think alignment, in that someone can do 1,000,000 maikiages or 1,000,000 techniques, and if they're slightly misaligned, every one of those contributes to a wearing out of the joint. But if you do it with a strong awareness of correct alignment and so on, then there's no reason why you can't go on and on and on. Okay. And the other thing too is we shouldn't try to train like a 20-year-old tournament fighter forever. You can still train hard and solidly into your 40s and 50s. You just have to train a little bit differently to look after the joints. Consistently strong training continues until at least well into the 40s, even the 50s, if a healthy lifestyle and injury prevention has been managed well. There is no reason to slow down if the body is still sound. From the 50s into the 60s, maintain challenging training goals whilst respecting physical changes. Train safely with full attention. Listen to the body. Above all, avoid injury. Take more rest to allow the body more time to recover. Do shorter, high-intensity sessions and longer flexibility sessions. The training that is right for you has to be found by you and should address your unique combination of physical, mental strength and weaknesses. Each day's training should make tomorrow's training the best it can be. Not too hard, not too easy. Generally, grades of 7th Dan and above are awarded for years of dedicated service and contribution to the art. The physical training continues, but as an expression of life. With age, the training turns more inward and the focus is placed more on the eternal spiritual quest. Meditation becomes a central part of the warrior's training. Nevertheless, a master will continue to train in the humble pursuit of perfection as an example to his juniors and simply out of habit. He can be regarded as having mastered his art, but continues tireless research, applying his own unique insights for the benefit of others, both those close to him and the generations to come. When I visited Okinawa in 1984, one of the things that impressed me most were the number of older people still training. I thought, that's exactly, I agree. And I think it's a reflection. As we know, Okinawans have a very long lifespan. I think it's, you can correct me, Mike, but I think it's one of the longest, if not the longest, natural lifespan of any demographic in the world. So that has a very profound influence on it. And then you look at the training methodology as well, and that also has an influence on it. So I don't think it's possible to lay the responsibility upon one aspect of training, but I think it's an accumulation of a whole bunch of things, and it starts with being aware. You know, we just have to simply be aware of the dangers of poor alignment and so on. Higona Sensei too. Yeah, there you go. I think, did I do this section on performance enhancing drugs recently? I think I may have done it just a couple of weeks ago, didn't I? If I did, I won't do it again. Does anybody recall whether I read the performance enhancing drugs section recently? If I did, I won't read it. I can read it if you want. I'm really dirty on performance enhancing drugs, but I fully understand why people do it. Because when I say I'm dirty on it, I have no sympathy for people who do performance enhancing drugs, then later on suffer as a result, very serious health issues and so on. And the number of people in every sport who, you know, have used drugs, and they're here for they're like a lightning bolt. They are amazing for a short period, then they go. Let me just read it anyway, because I think it's really valuable, and it's valuable because students ask about it, you know. The intelligent karateka chooses not to consume recreational drugs, including tobacco. There is no honest justification. If you choose to consume alcohol, do so in strict moderation. Notice I didn't say chooses not to use alcohol, because the history of Japanese martial arts, for some reason, is tied up with a very strong connection to alcohol consumption. I think they use it as a test. I know that Yamaoka Teshu, the famous 19th century samurai, was very proud of his ability to consume copious amounts of sake. There is no honest justification. If you choose to consume alcohol, do so in strict moderation. Also, the temptation to use performance-enhancing drugs, PEDs, of all kinds is everywhere, from high school athletes to the highest level of international competition. When the stakes are high, the pressure on athletes from every direction to win at all costs is overwhelming. In many sports, using PEDs does not give the athlete an unfair advantage so much as allows the athlete to catch up to everybody else already cheating. That is no justification. It simply points to the desperation of professional athletes and the environment that it encourages. Take, for example, professional cycling. And we just finished watching the Tour de France, which I love watching, actually. Take, for example, professional cycling, where confirmed cases of substance abuse for performance-enhancing drugs go back to the 1880s. The degree of drug cheating in this sport is absolutely breathtaking. It is as though everybody is complicit. I think I did read this. It is known that drugs have been used in the Tour de France since its inception in 1903. It was so widespread, so normalized, that by 1930, Tour organizer Henri de Grange wrote a reminder into the event's official rulebook that the organizer would not supply any drugs, suggesting that the riders would need to find their own. Oh, that's interesting. Do you know their names, Mike Clark? And that's only two out of, like, I would almost bet London to a brick that at least 75% of them are using drugs. And that's not just a reflection on them, but also a reflection on how desperate the sport is to constantly renew itself and attract attention from media. It's worth billions of dollars to France and to the sport. Drugs were not banned in the Tour until 1964. It did nothing except make it illegal. The athletes just kept using and denying they are using, whilst their medical teams worked hard to find ways to circumvent detection. The frequency and degree of drug abuse in professional cycling is absolutely stunning, and it is definitely not alone. Hiding drug abuse seems to always be a step ahead of detection. Random blood and urine tests catches a tiny fraction of offenders. The world of professional fighting, including Kyokushin, is no exception. Tournament fighters who use PEDs think that no one notices. With drug abuse comes a lifetime of denial, endless rationalization, and compromise of the highest values. Outwardly, there is an image of a courageous warrior, yet inside there is always a degree of self-doubt, of hiding the truth, and if not a sense of guilt that is often easily assuaged, then at least a sense of shameful knowing. And sadly, the users are actually nice guys, so their cheating is never called out. It is also true that the athlete sometimes feels trapped and for many reasons sees the use of PEDs as unavoidable. The pressure they place upon themselves to win at all costs is immense. The pressure placed upon them from the outside is often even worse. The only people will rarely, if ever, get called out for using drugs. I mean, I know people, it doesn't take a genius to tell when someone's using drugs. You don't, I won't even say anything, but, when someone has a cold, I mentioned this before, I'm sure, you go to the doctor and say, well, something's wrong. And they go, well, the doctor says, yeah, you got a cold, you're sniffing, you're sneezing, you're blowing, Well, I want you to prove it. The doctor goes, okay, I'll get a blood test. So he goes and gets a blood test and goes, there, you've got a cold. Okay, now I believe you. It's like, it doesn't take a genius to tell from certain symptoms that someone's using performance-enhancing drugs. 1980s Olympics from anywhere. Yeah, Marco, it's interesting, that widespread, and I really mean widespread, very few countries were immune to it. Widespread use and abuse of steroids began in the 1956 Olympics in Melbourne. And it wasn't until 1975 that they were banned. So you had a period there where it was open slather. And Australia is usually very proud of its clean record, but I just find it interesting that in 1975 they banned steroids, and in 1976 we had our first Olympics for decades where we didn't win a single gold medal. And the Olympics in I think Montreal, was it, in 1976. Actually, there was a real dip in records and so on. So the problem is, even for the Olympics, they don't really want to ban them. Look, I can't speak out of turn. Everything suggests that they'll do everything they can to be seen to be chasing them down. But the reality is, if everybody overnight stopped using drugs, you wouldn't get another record broken in the power and speed events for another 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Yes. Is it Icarus or Icarus? That's that documentary, isn't it? Very interesting. Icarus, alluding to the ancient Greek Icarus who flew too close to the sun and got burned. There you go. What can be done? There is, and when I say no one calls them out, the only people that can ever call anyone out for using drugs is themselves. And I mean, you think about that. What tremendous courage that would take. So, there are people that use drugs and they always represent themselves as being clean, and they'll always sometimes tell stories about themselves which represent certain courageous acts that they do. But the reality is, if you say to them, have you got the courage to openly admit to the world that you use performance-enhancing drugs? Not many people have got that courage. It's too much of a loss of face for many people. Other people have done it. I know people who have done it, and they do it for the good of others. They go, look, I did drugs, and I can tell you now that the short-term gains are not worth the long-term drawbacks. The short-term benefits are here and now and so attractive, but they are far outweighed by the long-term drawbacks. Sorry, I didn't even read that before I said that. And a lifetime of denial that disturbs the spirit. It is extremely rare to find an athlete who used PEDs and is honest about it. There is a code of silence driven by the shame. If no one admits their successes are fueled by drug cheating, the abuse is perpetuated. The most common outcome, very short-term gains with the potential of serious consequences, long-term health repercussions, loss of emotional control, a life of deceit, a loss of deep respect from others, and even premature death. Intelligence dictates that we fully familiarize ourselves with the effects and dangers to the body, which are obvious, the mind, which are often somewhat less obvious but more deeply rooted, and spirit, rarely known at all. The deep spiritual impact is so damaging that, if understood, the most ardent, the most dedicated user would stop using any sort of drug at all. It is my personal suggestion that one avoids all illicit drugs as well as smoking and drinking. Use your intelligence and don't play with drugs. It is that simple. Seek the natural highs of health born of training, happiness born of emotional and mental equilibrium, and a peaceful heart born of deep meditation. The Udansha levels of consciousness. Be right back. Just grab Mike's book. He said he wrote about it on page 45. So I'm actually going to. The mindset, attitude necessary to make karate work as a method of self-protection cannot be used in competition nor packaged into a sporting contest with all its rules and conditions. And in this basic understanding lies the limitations of kyogi, competition karate. By their very nature, all sports have a sole aim to win. The Olympic ideal stating it is not the winning that is important, but one's participation sounds wonderful. However, and I've got this ticked, would you believe? When I read books, I tick my columns, and I've got this ticked. However, the vast amount of cheating, I'm reading from Mike's book here, guys. The vast amount of cheating exposed through the game's modern history, from the athletes themselves through to the judges and officials, clearly shows this particular Olympic ideal is in reality given scant consideration by many within the Olympic movement. For those athletes who work hard and make a great sacrifice over many years to represent their nation on the world stage, adhering to the rules and spirit of their sport, it must be disheartening, to say the least, to learn once the games are over that they were relegated to the list of also-rans by individuals who, intent on winning at all costs, cheated. You need to look no further than Viv Simpson and Andrew Jennings' book, Dishonored Games, Corruption, Money and Greed at the Olympics, to discover the astonishing reality of the games. It makes for interesting but discouraging reading. Participation in any sport at an elite level has a limited shelf life, and those who pursue it a kind of built-in sell-by date. Once a certain age is reached, then you either stop altogether or continue with the same activity in a different, less intense way. In karate, when your sporting days are over, you might, like many others, make the false assumption that you can simply move across to Budo karate. If you do, you're making a big mistake. Actually, what happens is you move over to Kenko karate, training to maintain an active body or lifestyle. Kenko means health. Why so many make this error is unclear to me. People's egos, perhaps. Nevertheless, the difference in training between Kenko or health karate and Budo karate is enormous. Perhaps Budo karate has a marketing appeal not found in Kenko karate, and this is why so much noise comes from the commercial karate instructors about one type of training with almost nothing about the other approach. One might look no further than Tai Chi for an example of what happens to a martial art when successive generations focus on a single aspect of a multifaceted art. So that's straight out of Mike's book there. So he mentions that as well. And I must have read it before because I've ticked it. But that book, if you want, let me just go back and give you the name of that book that Mike mentioned. It's I'll type it in so you it has, obviously be a good read. Then you have the political side of it, where you have certain ideologies, political ideologies, who want to rationalize and justify their existence. So the way they do that is they think if they can show themselves to be superior on the sport field, and it proves the superiority of the ideology. And this is what happens I'm just typing the author's names. This is what happens in communist countries, and that's why I remember during the Olympics of, was it 1936, I think, Jesse Owens, the black American runner, just smashed everyone, and Hitler hated it. He left the stadium. It's always good to look at Jesse Owens too, and you look at his times that he ran, and consider that he ran on with old leather shoes. They didn't have starting blocks. They would dig a hole with sand in the ground on the track, and the track was grass, and so a lot of the improvements in times and everything, if you take away drugs and take away the improvement in the conditions under which they ran, the quality of the track and so on, you probably you probably find that some of the old athletes, particularly athletes like Jesse Owens, would still be competitive today. I think it's quite amazing. So thanks for mentioning that, Mike. I hope you didn't mind. I read that. But there you go. And I think when Mike talks about the difference between Budo karate, Kenko karate, and Kyogi karate, well, they're all different aspects. And somewhere in the book I've mentioned about how there are about 5 different reasons that people train. One is Kyogi, competition karate. Another one is Kenko or health karate. And you can't deny people for choosing one or the other, but you also have to be clear which one you're doing. You can't claim to be doing one when you're actually doing another. It's like someone who does boxercise at a fitness gym expecting to get in the ring against a fighter and being able to handle themselves. It's cheese and chalk. One is Kenko or health boxing, and the other one is Kyogi or fighting. You know, it's very different. And like Mike says, it's a very it just must be disheartening for athletes to, do their best and still get beaten out by people they just absolutely know are using drugs. It's like Ben Johnson was the fall guy. The drug administration always have to be seen to be chasing down the drug. So in '88 at Seoul, he was the one who was, the busted, but they've consequently found that there was only 2 athletes out of that final 8. One of them was Calvin Smith, who was my favorite runner. He was like a whippet. There were only 2 athletes, I think the Brazilian runner and Calvin Smith from America, who never tested positive for drugs. The other 6 athletes all had a record of being busted for drug abuse, but the American USA Olympic Committee had a really good way around it. What they would do is they'd take any positive drug test and they would pursue it through their own legal channels first to determine that it was verified and real before they actually announced it, made it public knowledge, and informed the WADA, the World Administration. So you had that guy from America who always badmouthed Ben Smith because he always got beaten by Ben Smith, that American athlete who won a bunch of gold medals on long jump and this sort of thing in the '84 Olympics. 86 Olympics, was it? 84 Olympics. But anyway, he'd been busted 3 times and they kept covering up his positive drug tests so that he could compete. Everyone was, and there's another really good book. See if I can remember what it's called. It's written by Ben Johnson's coach. I'll look it up whilst we're here, but that's a really good book too about the drug abuse in sport, and the degree of it was pretty criminal. And he actually is one of the ones that says that you don't take drugs to get an advantage. You take drugs to catch up to everyone else who's already taking drugs. But you can understand why people do it too, because when you have the difference of a thousandth of a second making such a difference in people's lives, well, then it's very, very challenging for people to say no to it. I'm looking through my library in Kindle because I have that book, the Speed Trap. It's called Speed Trap. That's it. Here it is. Is it? Yeah, there it is. Look, I'll show you the cover of it. Let me go back to the cover. This is well worth it too. That's Speed Trap by Charlie Francis. That's it. Speed Trap by Charlie Francis. You can get it on Kindle, and that's a really good read as well. And he pulls no punches. he just says that if you think people don't use drugs in the Olympics, you're dreaming. Mike, to be clear, my objection to commercial karate is not in the quality of karate being taught, but look, I understand fully. I agree with you. But the compromise made by the teacher who places their financial security in the hands of students. Yeah, look, I hear you. I have well-meaning people all the time who tell me, you should be doing this, this, and this. You'd be a millionaire. And then I go down to the dojo. I have 6 students on one night and 8 students on another. And if we have 12 students, I celebrate because we're over the top. We can hardly fit them in, and I hear what you're saying, Mike. It is. I mean, obviously, if we could have 100 students without compromising our belief system, well, then it'd make life a lot easier. But that's the challenge you face, isn't it? Let me get back to this. So let me just quickly, in the last 10 minutes, I'm just going to cover what I call the Udansha levels of consciousness. Udansha being the black belt realm. With the passing of Masayama came a pronounced difficulty in maintaining a uniformly high standard of Udansha ranks. Don't fall into the trap of chasing rank when you are altogether not deserving. Instead, seek the highest level of mastery for yourself through the endless pursuit, not of stripes, but of excellence. Aim to be an example of the highest quality. What follows is an outline of inner and outer qualities the black belt may aspire to on the warrior's eternal journey of character purification. First and second dan. The first and second dan levels are the red physical levels where the karateka reaches a high point in energetic physical training and strength. It is the first stepping off point for a lifetime on the martial arts path, the level of youthful vigor and trials. The student participates in various challenges that serve to make his karate stronger and more complete. He centers his life around the dojo while seeking out opportunities to expand his broad-based fitness and skills through cross-training in any range of activities. And when Mike talks in his book about Kyogi karate, competition karate, as opposed to Budo karate, Kyogi karate is really important too, especially if you want to reveal to yourself your own shortcomings and weaknesses. So there's another trap too when people steer towards the Budo karate side and deny the benefits that are available in Kyogi karate. And Kyokushin, as always says, Sosai used to say, ware ware kyogi shugi de aru. We are based on the importance of competition because Sosai saw what a benefit it was to people who expose themselves to competition. Now, having said that, I personally don't think there is any exposure of deep psychological and emotional weakness. And if you've ever been in a street fight where you're confronted by particularly more than one person and your life flashes before your eyes and you really think that this could, you're in big, big trouble, then you understand the sense that I'm talking about, that intrepidation and that fear. It's a natural fight, flight, or freeze sort of thing that we have. And in some competition, that absolutely doesn't even exist. When you have non-contact competition where it's just a competition to see who can put their fist close to the other person's face ahead of the other. I've got no problem with it. It's beautiful and it's incredibly good, but it removes that sense of deep, deep urgency, that sense of intrepidation and fear where you're actually facing potential death. I mean, I know 2 guys in Kyokushin, both who are very successful tournament fighters. Before they would fight in a tournament, they would write their will, pay off all their debts, and put on a clean pair of underpants, a new pair of underpants. And their argument was that way, knowing that all their debts were paid off, knowing that they'd written their will, and knowing that they had a new pair of underpants on, they had nothing to be afraid of if they died. And so they would go into the tournament fully with the mindset that they are willing to die today and they will do whatever it takes. And you could see it in their tournament fighting. So that kind of Kyogi karate, I think, is a very different thing to the sterile, non-contact style of karate, which has become more and more popular. And I think one of the reasons it becomes popular is because it doesn't threaten so much. You know, there's a degree of getting whacked in the face and everything, but it's not as threatening as Kyokushin, where you really have to, you really have to put it on the line and fight like nuts. You know, if you've never been in a Kyokushin tournament, or if you've ever been in a Kyokushin tournament, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Carl? Oh, yes, Carl Lewis. That's the one now. Carl Lewis. Thanks. Yes, Carl Lewis. The student participates in various challenges that serve to make his karate stronger and more complete. He centers his life around the dojo while seeking out opportunities to expand his broad-based fitness and skills through cross-training in any range of activities. And I mean running, cycling, soccer, athletics, gymnastics. He reflects on the level of his own skills and his ability to apply those skills in every scenario possible. He knows he has a lot of fun. He has a lot further to travel. That was Freudian. He has a lot further to travel on his martial arts journey, so begins with an honest assessment. To what degree has he fulfilled his true physical and technical potential? How would he adapt his current skills before a wide range of scenarios? How well would his skills hold up against other strong dojos or tournament champions, or a real assault where rage and violence are present against a skilled boxer, a wrestler, a judo player? With an honest appraisal, the beginner black belt will see many shortcomings in his skills, providing a roadmap for the next sector of his journey. What are the strengths and weaknesses of these other fighting arts and scenarios mentioned above? All unarmed fighting arts fall within certain ranges. What defines the art is the ranges it addresses. Those ranges are the kick range, punch range, headbutt elbow range, stand-up grapple range, which is also called gyakute, and the ground range. Our ability to address realistically the different ranges is determined by our training. Different fighting arts address the different ranges to varying degrees. Each art's strengths lie within its ranges. Concomitantly, each art's weaknesses also are a result of its training. I'm going to have to fix that. I just found a typo. Of its training to address its specific ranges. And an important key, each range trumps the range before it. Masoyama taught that a true martial artist cannot remain ignorant of other martial arts. The black belt knows his weakness and addresses them accordingly. The mindset of embracing his weaknesses or denying they exist begins at this level. Third, fourth, and fifth dan. The third, fourth, and fifth dan levels are the yellow intellectual levels. The expert karateka has spent many years polishing his craft, and this experience is reflected in the depth of his skill. That skill level continues to deepen as he applies his intelligence to everything he does. At this stage, age needs to be considered. The karateka who has trained hard throughout the years must take care of the body as middle age approaches. The nature of training changes from the extremes of intense physical preparation to a deeper inquiry into karate's philosophy and purpose, and the movement principles at the foundation of all techniques. His karate is transformed. It displays a high level of understanding and interpretation. He has made his karate his own. By studying various arts firsthand, he finds many layers of interpretation and application in his karate, and as he continues to improve, he eventually becomes comfortable applying skills across all the 5 ranges. From this point forward, he seeks to ask the right questions that address the challenging not points in his training, and importantly, be able to provide realistic solutions as answers. The goal is to reveal and resolve any issues across the entire range of Kyokushin techniques, not just for his own karate, but also for the ongoing strength and honor of Masoyama and Kyokushin as a whole, to whom his loyalty belongs. Such an intelligent approach to karate at this high level of mastery is an expression of Shoshin, the humble spirit of the beginner. It is a rebirth, a renaissance of every aspect of his training, providing new eyes through which to view familiar challenges. The result is a more balanced blend of physical and mental understanding of both the art and life in general. It is also at this level that one takes on the most demanding of the administrative responsibilities. Every ship needs a rudder, and organizations, including karate organizations, are no exception. Administration is both a service and an intense learning period. It provides structure and opportunity, allowing students of all levels to continue setting goals for a lifetime on the martial way. Regular dojo training, gradings, tournaments, special events, training tours, visitors for advanced seminars, and so on, all require experienced leaders to guide with integrity and enthusiasm. Often I look at black belts and I say, what are you thinking about opening a dojo or teaching? They go, no, I'm not interested. And, you know, sometimes it's disheartening, because the only reason that we exist is because people before us, and, you know, the old saying, we stand on the shoulders of the great ones who went before us. The only reason we're able to continue karate is because somewhere someone made the decision to behave in a selfless, serviceful way and provide us an opportunity to train, you know. And so we can't be selfish about it. I think as far as possible, we need to be encouraging black belts to get out and run a dojo, even if they run it once a week or twice a week. What that does is it matures their karate as well. I ran a dojo full-time close to 12 years. It was the most stressful time in my karate life. It actually made me grow to hate karate towards the end. Since then, I've learned more than ever. Yeah, well, that's the downside of it, especially when you don't. I'm guessing you did it all by yourself too, and it just depends on what support you get too. Yeah, I know, like, I've been running dojos forever, and none of them are ever financially secure. And every time, whenever I felt that pressure, Ken, that you're talking about, it's when I've tried to step up the dojo and turn it into a viable lifestyle business. It's not in my nature to do it. Someone comes in and says, oh, I can't really pay fees. Yeah, no, I just train, you know. I meant to ask before, Shihan, what does the kanji on my left arm say? It says a hair past a freckle going on a mole. It's the time in Japanese. I'll tell you another time, Marco. Page 42, my thoughts on Kyogi Kenkai Budo. But I think you're right. Kyokushin has led the way in putting your spirit on the line in tournaments. All sport has limitations, but some have fewer. Yeah, good point. I'll read page 42 afterwards. Robbing Peter to pay Paul. Exactly. I know. I hear you. And I'm going through this right now myself because of COVID. We lost a lot of students, and I used to be able to pay all the rent and you know, if I walked away, it's like Charles Dickens says, annual income 2 shillings, annual expenditure 1 shilling and 11 pence, result bliss. Annual income 2 shillings, annual expenditure 2 shillings and 1 penny, result misery. It's like that, you know. My personal experience was that I gained a deeper understanding of technique through the process. 100%, Bill. That is so true. And this is why when I teach kids, just got in. Good on you. Well, I'm just about to wind it up. So, Mac, sorry about that. But thanks for what we were discussing privately too. I think that's going to be a really good thing. But yeah, you're right, Bill. And that's one of the reasons why what I do, and Al Bellamy will be able to tell you, one of the things that I do now with my students is, as I'm teaching a technique, I'll explain the technique and then I'll ask them to re-explain it back. So I'll say, well, what's the first thing we have to do here? Settle our weight. Okay, what's the second thing we have to do? Keep our hips level as we move across the floor. What's the third thing? And I won't move on until they give us the answer. And that way, any student at any time could take the class and they'd be able to explain step by step how to go about it. They may not be able to demonstrate the little things that happen. Like someone will go, yeah, what if he does this? You go, oh, well, you got me there. That's where your experience as an instructor comes in. But generally speaking, you're right, Bill. I've learned infinitely more since I started to teach. Paddy, thanks, everyone. Look, thanks for your input. Mike Clark, thank you for allowing me to read your book. I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm not the only one in the world who's dirty on performance-enhancing drugs. And I'll have a look at that. The difference between Kyogi, Kenko, and Budo karate. Kyogi, competition karate. Kenko, health karate. Budo karate. Budo karate. Thanks, everybody. I'll wind it up there. I've got to get to training anyway, but as you may be aware, I'm taking a leaf out of Paddy Pinto's book. You want to get along and watch some of Paddy's interviews at Kyokushin Shuffle, and Paddy can be talking to someone, and I can see that he's got the clock and it's ticking over, tick, 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 tick. Anyway, thank you for the great interview. Oh, it's an hour, and he sticks to an hour very, very strictly. Daniel, thanks. Bill Stewart, yeah, appreciate that, Bill. Thanks. Vin, good to see you, man. Sorry you just missed it. We're just winding up. Paul, arigato gozaimashita. Thank you very much. Marco, hope you enjoy the read, Marco. And you'll notice a difference because what I read today is essentially brand new for the new edition. Mac, good to see you. Torbjörn, thanks as always. I always like to see your name there. I miss going to Norway, and I'm looking forward to next year. Good on you, Paddy. Keep up the good work. I love that interview with John Will, and I love that interview with Mark Castanini too. Paul, good, dankeschön. Mein Freund. Sven, thanks once again. Great. Love Fridays. Thank you very much. Sensei Paddy. Yeah, good on you. I'm glad everybody should get along to the Kyokushin Shuffle. Bang, there you go. Paddy Pinto's interviews. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for coming along. Appreciate your support. Don't forget, subscribe and share. Look, we can't get out enough. If 25 people come, 25 people are already subscribing. But if 25 people share it with their students and friends, then we can see an increase in numbers. And I really think what we discuss is great stuff. Don't just keep it for yourself. Share it with as many people as you can. That's what the love's all about. Share it, get the word out there, like, subscribe, and Patreon family, thank you very much again for your support. And like I said, it's really helping me get through these challenging times. I don't mean psychologically challenging. I just mean with the COVID. So thank you all, Patreon. Matt and Maddie Karamatic is my newest Patreon family member. Appreciate it very much. Also, everybody, take care. Speak on Monday.